Get excited, go tell everybody that Jesus Christ is King. I said, get all excited, go tell everybody that Jesus Christ is King. I said, get all excited, go tell everybody, Jesus Christ is King. Jesus Christ is the King of Kings. We've been talking about Elijah. We've been talking about the calling of Elisha. Now in the 20th chapter of 1 Kings, we read about a king. And probably he was one of the sorriest men as far as backbone and character and standing for what's right as you'll ever read about in the Bible. And his wife, you'll recognize his wife. You know, so many times the wife is the head of the house. And his wife's name was Jezebel. Now I've got your attention because you've heard all your life about Jezebel. And a mean woman, a vengeful woman. And a woman that encouraged her husband to live the life of sin. But the time had come. Verse 20, chapter 20, verse 1. Now Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, gathered all his forces together. 32 kings were with him. He had horses, he had chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and made war against it. Now, when you besieged a city, you surrounded it. You pretty well covered all your bases, much like they did up in Boston the other night. They had people all around that area until it seemed it was impossible for someone to escape. And they had them there, and they were going to make war against them. Then he sent messengers into the city to Ahab, king of Israel, and said to him, "This says Ben-Hadad, your silver and your gold are mine." Now, I want you to listen to this. Your silver and your gold are mine. Your loveliest wives and children are mine. I'm going to take what's precious from you. Now, when I read that, I think of the devil. And I think of the fact that Ahab had lost his relationship with God. He had never truly believed in God. He'd let his wife put false prophets in control. He had let his wife bring idol worship into the country. He was just a weak, jellyfish backboned man. And now that he was surrounded by all these kings and all these soldiers and all these armies, and the king sent word to him, "I'm going to take your wives, I'm going to take your silver, and I'm going to take your gold." Now that's what Satan wants to do, and that's what happens when you play the game of sin. I want you to get that. You end up doing things that you said you would never do. You end up sacrificing things that you said you would never sacrifice. And you pay prices that you really can't afford to pay. And don't tell me it won't happen to you. Anytime you play games with the devil, anytime you let sin come between you and God. And this is just, to me, a good example of how low you can go. Can you imagine
if someone come to your house and said, I'm going to take your wife. I'm going to take your children. I'm going to come in and I'm going to get all your valuables. And you are not going to do anything about it. Now, what would you say if that happened to you? What if a bunch of gangsters surrounded your house tonight and said, I've come to get your wife. I've come to get your children. I've come to get all your gold. I've come to get all your silver. I'm going to take it from you and you're going to like it. What would you say?
I'd tell them if they kept coming, I'd be back at Homestead Air Force Base.
Coy says that when he was at Homestead Air Force Base, he was a running back. That he'd run and they'd bring him back. That he was an athlete there. He was a running back. But what would you do? What would a man with any integrity at all do?
Fight for his right.
He'd fight for what's right. What would a man do that had seen the power of God, as Ahab had seen the power of God? He'd been up on Mount Carmel, hadn't he? Hadn't he seen the old prophet call fire down from heaven? Hadn't he seen the power of God manifest over and over and over again? He'd been through the drought. He'd been through the famine. He'd seen God send the rain when it was rain time. But he didn't say, I'm going to go to God and I'm going to tell God on you and he'll stop you. He didn't do that. What did he do? What did he do? Well, I'm going to read here to you. Just as you say, I and all that I have are yours. Just whatever you want. Just whatever you want. Just come get it. I've not got enough courage. I have forsaken the Lord. I've let my wife control me until I don't dare go to God. Just come on and get it. Now what do you think about someone like that? You say, I would never do that. What about the person that gives their husbands and their wives and their cars and their houses and their children and all they've got to play the game of sin? What's the difference? What's the difference? Sin can take you lower than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost you more than you can afford to pay. And what will it profit you? What will it profit you? Nothing. You cheat your mama, you cheat your daddy, you cheat on your wife, you cheat on your loved ones, you abuse your kids, you do horrific things that you never said you'd do. And what does it profit you? So when the king Ben-Hadad said to Ahab, I'm going to come and get everything you got, Ahab said, come on, I'll give it to you. Come on. I'll give it to you. Let's see what's happened. Then the messenger came back and said, thus speaks Ben-Hadad, saying, indeed, I have sent to you, saying, you shall deliver to me your silver, your gold, your wives, and your children. Now listen, 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 listen. Are you with me? But I will send my servants to you tomorrow about this time, and they're going to search your house and the houses of your servants, and it shall be that whatever is pleasant in your eyes, they will put in their hands and take it out. I'm not going to just take your wife. I'm not going to just take your children. I'm not going to just take your gold. I'm not going to just take your silver. I'm going to send my servants. They're going to go through every house you got and anything we want. Now, what do you think of that? You say, well, when he took his children and his wife and his silver and his gold, he ought to have been satisfied, shouldn't he? I mean, you know, you take a king's wives and children and silver and gold, and he had a lot of silver and gold, you ought to be satisfied, oughtn't you? And Ahab had done said, come on, get it. Now listen to me. Listen to me. But Satan's never happy. He don't want to quit. You listen to me. Until he takes everything. He don't want to just get you down. He don't want to just get you broke. He wants to take your pride. He wants to take your joy. He wants to take your peace. He wants to take your happiness. He wants to utterly, completely destroy. He will never quit. Are you listening to me? He will not give up until he casts you into hell to burn with him forever. Don't ever get in your head, well, I've kissed up to Satan and he'll just take a few things from my life. Don't ever think that. His dream and his vision for you and for anyone in this world that he can separate from God, listen to me, is to make you a gutter-sucking bum. I'm not going to just take your gold. I'm not going to just take your silver. I'm not going to just take your children. I'm not going to just take your wife. Oh, buddy, anything you've got that's worth anything. Anything you've got that's worth anything, I'm going to take. And I'm going to destroy you. You see, why I say there's no winners when it comes to playing the game of sinners. You remember I read to you this morning from Galatians that as long as you followed the devil and as long as you did the things of this world, you couldn't have the beautiful life. You couldn't have love and joy and peace, long-suffering and tenderness and kindness and happiness. You couldn't have the things money couldn't buy. As long as you played the game of sin, there are no winners. That's what's so sad in the world tonight. People that are unwilling to put God first. How many times had God delivered Ahab? How many times had he taken care of him? And now once again, he was in trouble. Well, you say, what was the end result? Let's read on and see. We've got a little time. Verse 7, so the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, notice, please, and see how this man seeks trouble. For he sent to me for my wives. He sent for my children, my silver, my gold, and I did not deny him. And all the elders and all the people said to him, do not listen or consent. Finally, he found somebody with some wisdom. They said, you're crazy to do that. You're crazy to do that. And all the elders and all the people said to him, do not listen or consent. That's crazy. He'll never be satisfied until he takes your life. I looked at those young brothers that they called in Boston. And I thought of the pain and the suffering and the heartache and the bitterness and the sacrifices they had made in their lives to live for Satan. They had sacrificed for years to live for Satan, and they were willing to sacrifice their lives for Satan. The elders said, you're crazy to do that. Therefore he said to the messengers of Ben-Hadad, tell my lord the king all that you sent for to your servant the first time, I will do. But I'm not going to give you everything that is precious and valuable to me. This thing I cannot do. And the messengers departed and brought word to him. I've often read this and wondered, what did he have in his house that was more valuable to him than his wives, his children, his silver, or his gold? Have you ever thought about that? Looks like that would be the most valuable thing you had, don't it? Huh? You love your wife. You wouldn't want to just turn her over to have her mutilated by an army of ruffians. And what about your children? What about your children? I know people that turn their children over. I knew a woman one time in Conway that traded her 12-year-old daughter to a drug dealer for her drug bill. I knew a woman one time in Myrtle Beach that traded her son, about 3 years old, to a man for a pint of cheap whiskey. And she had sugar so bad that the end of her nose was rotting off. The sugar was eating her fingers and her nose off, and she traded her child to a man for a pint of cheap whiskey. I know that to be a fact. What could be more valuable than saving the life and protecting your loved ones? What if somebody wanted to destroy your children? What if somebody wanted to destroy your children? And yet I see parents today that are letting the devil destroy their children. But Ahab was willing to do that. Take my wife. Take my children. Take my girls. Take my boys. Mutilate them, use them, abuse them. Can you imagine that? How low can you go? What was in his house? I want to ask you this question. You're a smart woman. What was in his house that was more valuable than his wives and his children and his silver and his gold? What was there? What was it that he couldn't give up? Huh? Maybe I ought to make that an assignment for you to look up. What was it that was more valuable than your husband and your wife and your silver and your gold and your children? What could have been in his house that he said, no, I can't do that? You know what I think it was? Huh? His what? No. No, wasn't his life. Huh? Wasn't the Ark of the Covenant. He didn't care nothing about the Ark of the Covenant. What do you think it was?
Magic carpet.
Magic carpet. You can tell he's Kia salesman. Is it his dog? I know a lot of people that like their dog better than they do their wives and children. You can have my wife, but don't you mess with my dog. What do you think it was? Huh? Sinful ways. I'd say you're getting close. I'd say you're getting close. Who was his wife? You all are forgetting something. He didn't say, I'm going to give you Jezebel, did he?
Been the whores then.
Huh?
Been the women then.
No. Who was his wife? And what did she do? She worshiped all these idols, and she controlled Ahab.
Well, now he's free from her control.
No, he wasn't.
Well, if he took your,
He wasn't going to let him have Jezebel. He had her hid in the house. And Jezebel said, you ain't going to let him come in here and get my idols. And when Jezebel spoke, he jumped. That's the only thing I can figure, really. The only thing he feared was Jezebel. 12 kings surrounded him. He wasn't afraid. Now don't mess with Jezebel. And Jezebel told him, I'm sure. You remember how angry she got when Elijah killed her prophets, her false prophets? What did she say to Elijah? What did she send him word? Huh? Just as surely as they're dead, I'll see to it by this time tomorrow you're dead. She was a mean woman. And I think he was afraid of Jezebel. And she probably said, now this is just speculation, I just hear, you can give me your silver, and you can give me your gold, and you can give me your other wives, and you can give me your children, but you ain't going to give my idols up. People love and worship their idols. Do you have an idol tonight? You know what an idol is? Something you think more of. Something you think more of than anything in this world. There are no winners in the game played by sinners. The wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is what? Everlasting life. I thought that was an interesting story. And we're going to go on. We'll talk some more about Jezebel. She would do anything she had to do. She had no scruples. A mean woman. Let's stand. Tonight, is there anything in your life? You're probably the best people in Myrtle Beach. But is there anything in your life that's more precious to you than God? Think about it.
I don't know why Jesus loved thee. I don't know why he cared. I don't know why he sacrificed his life. Oh, but I'm glad he did. Where would I be if Jesus didn't love me? Where would I be if Jesus didn't care? Where would I be if he hadn't sacrificed his life?